We're going to start with customer reimbursement. The problem we're solving here is that D365 customers have come to us over the last few years and said they really don't want to have to set up and maintain a vendor and vendor bank account information just to simply reimburse a customer. So we've solved that problem. We have a few features as part of that, and this is available on SK Global's version 11. And again, you can see more detail in the release notes, and then Tina will present customer reimbursement to you as part of this session shortly. The next problem that we solved is that customers were also coming to us. We had a batch of different customers over the last couple of years who have wanted an easier way to transfer funds between internal bank accounts. They didn't want to be doing all of their business operations in their ERP that they've now invested a lot of money into taking live. They've got SK Global running, and they don't have to go out to the portal anymore to pay vendors, but they were still having to go out to the portal to transfer funds. And so bank-to-bank transfer allows them to come back into the ERP, into SK Global's solution, and take care of their internal bank account transfers. And so Chuck will show that to you today. That's also available in SK Global version 11. And then lastly, supply chain financing. We know that not every one of your customers has supply chain financing requirements, but we had enough demand for this both in Europe and the US that we added some enhancements to our solution around supply chain financing. So if you've got customers who are using a financing platform, one of the most popular ones on a global scale is Prime Revenue, but we've also seen that many banks have their own financing platforms. So Chuck will show you how we've enhanced our solution and included an add-on now for making supply chain financing and getting the information to the platform in an easier way. So that was the pitch for all three of these solutions. I'm sure you're sick of hearing me talk. So we're going to get into software now, and I'm going to hand it over to Tina to present customer reimbursement.
Thank you, Ainsley. So just 1 second, I should start sharing my screen. Hopefully you guys can see my screen now.
Looks good.
Okay. So with customer reimbursements, as Ainsley was showing the slides, and I think she'll send those out later, but the issues with the standard D365 process that we were trying to solve there was the current process only supported customer reimbursements through the accounts payable process, meaning that it required the customer and both a customer and a vendor to be set up, and you had to have bank accounts maintained on both of those. So you'd have to, if the customer changed their bank account information, you would also have to maintain that on the vendor side, and you'd have to push those invoices or those reimbursements from AR to AP. So a lot of our customers did not want to do that. They just wanted to be able to reimburse from the customer side. Okay. So anybody who's familiar with our software at all knows we always start with format. So I'm going to go into our format library. And anybody who's seen our new version, you'll notice some things have changed. And we'll look at those in just 1 second. But in our formats, we have out here, file formats, we've added a section called customer reimbursements. Now the customer reimbursement section is based off the AP/EFT. So they are mirrored after those. And you'll see they're not all out here right now, but if you have a customer that wants to use customer reimbursements, we would just need to modify that to where we're pulling the information from. So we would just, so let's say, they're using Bank of America, we would just need to have our development go in and make the changes to that format, because instead of pulling from the vendor name, for example, we're going to be pulling from the customer name, and instead of pulling from the vendor bank account number and vendor routing number, we're going to pull that all from the customer. So there are some changes that would need to be made there. So you'll see there's a lot less here, but that's really just because there's a lot that we're only supporting the ones that we are currently using today, or our customers are currently using today. With this, we do also support those inbound acknowledgement files. So if you're familiar with AP EFT, generally within 15 to 20 minutes after sending a file to the bank, most banks can send that inbound file back, telling us whether or not the payments were accepted or rejected. And we have the payment specifications here. Now, these are tied to accounts receivable methods of payment. So if I go into my accounts receivable here, my methods of payment, you'll see there is a customer reimbursement here, method of payment. If I look over here, we have a customer reimbursement method of payment here, and it is tied to that format. Okay. So we will look at our parameters. And for those of you who have not seen the 11 version of Treasury Automation Suite, here's where you're going to be seeing some things change a little bit. So we've renamed this to electronic funds transfer. So it used to be AP, EFT, and direct debit. So just letting you guys know that's been renamed. So you'll see it here as well. And here we'll have our customer reimbursement set up. It is very similar to our AP EFT, so I'm not going to go over all of that. I'm just going to highlight some of the differences. One, we did not do emails with this because we figure customers really more know about the refunds. But the other pieces that we did include here is we did include an account approval for the customer reimbursements. So you can include the so you can enforce approvals on those customer bank accounts the same way you do on the AP EFT, the bank accounts for those vendor payments. The other thing I want to talk about are these customer reimbursement defaults. So this default method of payment is going to be the default method of payment we're going to use when we're reimbursing customers. So whether we're reimbursing customers from an overpayment or if we're just reimbursing them because, let's say we have in our system that if they buy so much or it's royalties or things like that, that we have other agreements with them. We have a default payment specification and that we're also going to pay them in. The minimum amount to reimburse. So we're not going to reimburse them in this case unless we have at least $50 out there. And it's going to have been aged at least 7 days. Okay. The include customer invoice. If this is checked, if we have, the customer has funds to reimburse and they have invoices, should we offset the two? Okay, if this is set to yes, we are going to offset the two. If it is set to no, we are just going to not include the invoices. We're just going to refund the credits on their account. Okay. And this allow override on payment proposal. Are we going to allow a user that's issuing these customer refunds to make any changes to what we have set up in the defaults? So if it's set to yes, we will allow that. If it's set to no, that user that's issuing these is going to have to live with what we've set here. Okay. So we didn't want to make a decision if AP or AR would be making this process or initiating this process. So we did create a new journal under accounts receivable. And so under accounts receivable payments, we do have a customer reimbursement journal. I'm going to do a new one. Okay. And go into my lines. And I'm going to do a payment proposal. So we made changes to that payment proposal process. And you'll see it's pulled in my defaults from my Treasury Automation Suite parameters. Now, because I have said I can change this, it will let me make any changes I have here. I am going to go ahead in here and put in my offset account and my summarized payment date. And let's go ahead and click OK. So we'll see here, it's bringing in both an invoice and a credit I have out here for this customer. I'm going to go ahead and click create payments. Okay. And it has a $300 payment that I'm going to send out here for this customer. I'm going to go ahead and validate my customer reimbursement. And that's just going to make sure that I have everything I need to create the file. And I have the same options I do with AP EFT to create file now or later. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I'm just going to go ahead and say create file now or send file now. Okay. Now, if you're set up to SFTP to the bank, that will go ahead and send the file directly to the bank. And I did see we had a question about the journal name. This is a journal that is set up in General Ledger. It is marked as a customer reimbursement journal. So it is set up and maintained in standard D365. There is just a flag here that means that it can only be used with customer reimbursements. Okay. Now I'll go back to Treasury Automation Suite, and under periodic accounts receivable, we'll have our create and send customer reimbursement files here. And here's my file that I just created. Now, if I am getting back that inbound file from the bank, it will complete this for me. Since I'm not connected to a bank, I'm going to go ahead and complete this process. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now, based on my parameters, I also have my journal set to post upon file completion. So that is posting. And similar with our AP EFT, if necessary, I can also reverse that posted payment. So if, 2 days later, it comes back that, the bank has originally accepted the payment, but the account was closed or something else, and now I need to reverse that payment, I will be able to do that by clicking reverse post payment, and it will completely reverse that payment and open that invoice and those credit notes back up. Okay. So I will now pass the ball. I guess that's an old school WebEx saying, but I'll pass it over to Chuck